Apologize for that. It seems like there was a problem with my camera or my phone. So as I was saying about the SERB manual and the relation to the EIT, the thing that you want to do, and I didn't emphasize this, is that the same paper, the guideline that you're going to see online, will also tell you what topics are going to be in your particular breadth section. So I apologize for ignorance, but I don't believe that the breadth is the same for every person. I know for sure when I used that paper, that guideline, I was following it such that my exam would only cover a certain topic. So that should be the same case for you. I apologize if that's not right, but it should be this. It should be the breadth section should be different for each, depending upon which discipline you have. And when you open up that specification that you have from the NCEES website, it will tell you which topics that you need to focus on that's going to be on your exam. So, like I said, when you find out what those are, figure out what your weaknesses were from the EIT on that list. So for me, it was geometric design. It was the vertical and the horizontal curves. And I really wanted to just tackle it and understand everything about it. Enough to be able to do the problems, of course. But I knew that was a weakness, and it was more of a conceptual weakness. So for me, I went through, and not just for me, if it's a weakness, it's most likely going to be a conceptual weakness in the beginning. So you're going to want to read more about it and, just try to focus it on it, try to figure out what's going on and related to the topic. So, yeah, there we go. So I went ahead and I read it. Now, granted, I want to say that if you want to play it safe, you could always just read every section that's covered in your particular breadth exam. So for me, that's exactly what I did. I didn't care whether it was a weakness or not. Although when I got to there, I made sure to focus more on practice problems so that I can basically make sure that I don't get it wrong again. Because if there is a weakness in anything related to the breadth, you want to make sure that it's basically no longer a weakness. That doesn't necessarily apply to the EIT, but in particular applies to the PE, because if you don't work on it and if it's still a weakness, I'm sorry, but it's gonna make you have an excuse for getting something wrong, and you have to, for the PE exam, it's a very difficult exam, so you want to make sure that there's no room for practically any error if you can find it. This is kind of, I want to say that if you want to compare this to any type of other activity, it's like the difference between just doing average and being an excellent person. So it's what I would consider in the engineering community chasing excellence, because you're essentially trying to show that you're extremely competent and that you know exactly what you're doing, and that you basically you're competent enough to be trusted by practically at least 80% of the professionals out there. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but at least 80%, I would say. So, when everybody can trust you, you're considered an excellent at what you're doing. So that's why you can't leave any room for error on the exam. You have to make sure that you have no weaknesses in it. So what I mean by that is, you don't necessarily have to be strong at anything. You just have to make sure that you don't have weaknesses in it. So maybe you don't know how to do the hardest problems in the world, but at least you have a fundamental understanding, a very solid fundamental understanding of each topic. So that's what I recommend. And so for me, I had some issues with the vertical curve stuff, and I did spend about 2 weeks trying to master the questions, and I pretty much got them all right. So I started getting them all right. So I was solid. And then when the test came by, I had no problems answering. They were the easy. They were actually, I was lucky. They were easy versions of that stuff. So, also I had a weakness for whatever reason for what was it? What was my for? It was like the soil transportation stuff. Excavations. There we go. My weakness for excavations was there because I didn't understand how the process worked and stuff like that. I didn't visualize how what swelling was. In fact, I thought swelling was a geotechnical swelling, where it, the technical term for swelling would be what I thought was just what happens if you unload the soil and then it heaves. That's what I thought swelling was, and that's conceptually incorrect for excavations. Swelling is just when the volume increases because you've excavated it. So, and obviously there's air. Like you'll learn more about that if if you choose to do the PE exam. But the thing about the CERM and all the breath topics is that there's a lot of topics. So I mean, I would say the thing you want to strive for is that you don't have a weakness in any of them, anything that would be related to your topic. So let me show you something of what your references should look like by the time you're ready to take the exam. Now, apologize if I have like some stuff here. I just want to show you what your references should look like. So this is literally kind of like what I brought to the exam. So I have a suitcase of books, and I want to say that this is kind of what you want, like, so that you have no uncertainty for, or room for error, I want to call it. So it's funny, I still have this. This is the FE version, but for the handbook. And also, obviously, these are the ones I use for work, but I tab this, tab that, I tab the ACI. So yeah, there we go. So let's start with the CERM. I wanted to cover this real quick. So if we get the CERM here, so see how I tabbed everything in the CERM, right? The reason why I did this is because, like I said, you don't want to have a weakness for anything. So if I knew that I had to go to excavations, for example, I have something already in here. So for excavations, it's been like a month, so that's chapter 86, I think. Yeah, somehow I just memorized it. Oh no, that's not right. No, that's not right. Sorry, I haven't used this for a while. Yeah, let's see. You're like, well, that just defeats the purpose of tabs, right? Excavations. Let's see, no active. Yeah, this should have been way easier to do. Okay, time to just like so, well, this is excavations and not in the sense of construction. Let's see. I apologize. Oh, here we go. I guess it is. It's like 80 something, I guess. So if we go here, this is mass diagrams. So yeah, this is kind of the stuff that. So I don't have a specific tab for this, but I have a bunch of notes on how to get the different volumes. So yeah, that's something that you could use on the exam. And then this shows you how to do it. But anyway, the point I'm making is that I have a lot of tabs and stuff like that showing you how, and this is like a good page because you could literally use all of this just for the geotech properties that would normally just be ridiculous to derive yourself. But anyway, so my point is that when you have these references and you can go to it easily, you don't really need to. It's kind of like it signals to your brain about how to do the problems, but it also allows you to just easily go to it whenever you need to, and you don't really have to think much about it. In fact, I just showed you the volume formulas for the the excavation stuff. So, like swelling, what was it, contracting, whatever it's called. Apologize if I don't. Oh, shrinkage. There we go. All that stuff. So, when I was on the exam, I was able to go to it, and I didn't really have to think much about it. I just used the formula based on how I understood it. And then also, what you're going to find is that sometimes it's based on judgment, because they'll tell you what shrinkage is, but then it's not the same. It's not the same thing as inside the manual formula. So you'll have to like add 1 to it or subtract 1 to it to use their formula properly. So the SERM is very useful because it allows you to go to easily reference a page and just basically produce a formula and then do a calculation as quick as possible. So I don't really want to drag on for too long, but you like I said, I showcase some of the books I'm using, and it would be a little bit crazy to show you everything. But yeah, that's what I would say, is that by the time this is all done, you're gonna have a suitcase full of books if you're being successful with it. So now the next thing, apart from the SERM, and by the way, when you read the SERM, like I explained, you don't necessarily need, and in fact I wouldn't do this. I would not tab it quite yet. You don't want to tab it until you've actually used it for problems. I take that back. Tab it very lightly in the beginning. And that's what I did. I tabbed it very lightly. I didn't do much tabbing. When I read it, I would tab like one little page out of 100 pages, and it would be there for a while. And then what you want to do is do practice problems, and then figure out and then go back after doing a bunch of practice problems and realize what you could have tabbed that would have helped you getting through the problems much more efficiently. So now that we've talked about that, the next step, and you probably already figured this out, is that you're going to want to practice problems. Now, this is, I want to emphasize this, have the discipline, if you've decided or planned to go through certain topics in the book, to like study it instead of practicing, have the discipline to go through everything and try to understand it before you start the practice problems. I believe in this principle very much, because if you try to mix together your thought process of practicing and your ability to understand the material, what's going to happen is you're going to either you're not going to learn it properly, or you're not going to actually understand it. And when you try to do a problem next time, it's going to be based off of some loose idea that you did from another problem, which may not be completely correct. Because what you want to do is you want to be able to use your understanding to be able to do new problems in the most, I want to say, most accurate way possible. The way that makes perfect sense. You don't want to just go approach a problem and say, well, it might be this because I saw this thing. Maybe you thought, okay, well, shrinkage will apply because the same shrinkage formula will apply because I used it in this excavation thing. When in reality, you start to realize that actually they're asking you something completely different, although it looks similar. So you want to understand before that, and I believe in this very much. If you do decide that you don't understand it and that you really need to review it. Now, there are actually, so I think there's someone named Jorge Sanchez who has explained that the Lidbergh reference is mostly irrelevant information, and it's true. It's useless. It's like you're gonna read it and you're gonna be like, why does this apply? But in some cases, it's actually useful. Like it's something that you can use over and over again, and something that you might actually forget. So that's why you would want to have tabs. That's one reason. But then also, it's not completely useless. So in those cases, then it's a good idea to use it for practice problems. But yeah, I mean, sometimes the SERM can be deceptive because a lot of times you will go over useless information. For example, there's the SERM goes over stuff related to like I want to say, how do I say it? Fluid flow over sluices and cases where it's like certain cases for sluices and jumps that are not necessarily, that are so special that they're not even ever going to show up on an exam. They're just there to provide extra information. That's not really, it's just too special of a circumstance. It's too much in depth. So sometimes it's too much in depth, and you just know it's not going to be on the exam. So that's so. But like once you like for example, you won't. It's weird because you won't actually see that it's not useful until you've understood what is being presented at a more fundamental level. So for me, for example, that was another weakness I had. So one weakness I had was open channel flow in terms of what determining upstream and downstream conditions. I didn't understand how you basically figured out, okay, well, what's the depth at this in the downstream based off of the upstream conditions. What based off of the upstream having a certain Froude number, less than 1, I believe it's subcritical. Greater than 1. I'm sorry, no, less than 1 is supercritical. Greater than 1, subcritical. Did I get that right? I apologize. That's another reason why you want a reference manual. Because if you just forget, it's so easy to forget about all these things. Anyway, that's not the point of this. The point is that, for example, that once I understood the idea of the Froude number, how to actually get those depths, the whole process behind it. How do I say that? The fact that if you have a jump, it has to do with turbulence, and why you have a jump to begin with. Essentially, you just can't. You start at supercritical, or you start at supercritical, and then it has to become subcritical. So these types of things, right? Once I understood that, then I knew that special case that Lidbergh was presenting, just near the end of that section, was just completely irrelevant and didn't matter for any of the problems I was doing. It was just too special. I just knew that it didn't matter. So sometimes it's going to happen. But whereas if you didn't understand it, you would think that it has something to do with figuring out what open channel flow is. When in reality, it's just a derivative of something more fundamental, and you don't really need to understand it. It's just it's just too special of a case. So like I said, you're gonna see that a lot, and sometimes it's information just to fill in the book, just so he can get his money, I guess. But also sometimes information that is needed is not in there. So the section on hydrology, the stuff related to unit hydrographs, I feel like I do believe it was not sufficient information, because when I